I never thought of myself as unusual. For most of my life, I passed easily as just another guy doing his best to keep things together. Jordan, 27, marketing coordinator at a respectable but unremarkable agency downtown. My days were predictable. Client decks, lukewarm coffee, the occasional praise from a manager who barely remembered my name. From the outside, everything looked fine. Clean apartment, decent paycheck, clothes that fit well enough, a gym card collecting dust in my wallet. And then there was Emma. For nearly a year and a half, she was the undeniable highlight of my life. Smart. Magnetic. The kind of woman who owned every room she stepped into without ever raising her voice. She worked at a major firm, climbing fast, always dressed sharply. Sleek blazers, bold lipstick, eyes constantly flicking to her phone as if the world couldn't afford to wait. We met at a networking event, of all places. She laughed at my dry humor. I was instantly hooked on her confidence. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was the part of me I kept locked away. After our very first date, still riding the buzz of her smile and the way she'd touched my arm, I went home alone. Instead of collapsing into bed, I opened my closet, pushed aside the coats, and knelt in front of a scuffed trunk tucked against the wall. The lock clicked open, and my pulse picked up, not from fear, but from relief. Inside were pieces of a private world. Soft blouses folded with care, delicate lingerie, a couple of inexpensive wigs, and the first heels I'd ever bought with shaking hands years ago. I'd been dressing this way since I was 16, always alone, always careful. It wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about touching a quieter, more vulnerable version of myself, one I never felt safe letting out. I didn't hate this side of me, but I didn't trust the world with it either. And I definitely didn't trust Emma. She was sharp-edged, driven, immaculate. I couldn't imagine her reacting with curiosity or kindness if she ever saw me in stockings or makeup. The thought of confessing made my throat tighten, me fumbling over words, her expression hardening, that look of disbelief settling in her eyes. So I said nothing. When we moved in together 6 months ago, the secret became heavier. I learned to hide better. I waited for her work trips, her weekend retreats with her sister, the rare moments when the apartment was truly mine. Those moments grew fewer, and the risk grew larger. Every time I opened that closet, I wondered if this would be the day everything unraveled. If she found out, I didn't know what scared me more, losing her, becoming a joke, or watching the woman I loved look at me like I was someone she'd never really known. Even knowing how dangerous it was, the urge never faded. If anything, it sharpened. The more tightly I tried to seal it away, the louder it whispered to me. Mornings were the worst. I'd sit on the edge of the bed pretending to check emails while Emma got ready beside me, sliding into sheer tights like it was second nature, brushing light across her cheekbones, fastening buttons with effortless authority. She looked powerful in those moments. Certain. Untouchable. And I hated how badly I wanted that feeling for myself. So I split in two. In daylight, I played my part perfectly. The reliable boyfriend with ambition, the man who talked about promotions and future plans, who remembered her exact coffee order and charmed her colleagues at office mixers. But when night fell, when she stayed late at work or drifted off to sleep beside me, I became careful again. Quiet. I'd slip into the spare room, lift the lid of that hidden trunk, and let myself breathe. Silk against my skin. A faint sheen of gloss. Just enough to feel different. Lighter. Like I could exist without bracing for impact. I never imagined it would last. I just didn't expect it to end the way it did. Everything unraveled with a message. We need to talk. I know. The words sat on my screen like a loaded weapon. My thumbs hovered uselessly. I typed back, "What?" But she never answered. That evening, she came home later than usual. I heard the precise rhythm of her heels against the floor, each step measured. I was on the couch, scrolling aimlessly, pretending my heart wasn't hammering. She stopped in the doorway and studied me. No greeting. No warmth. Her lipstick was slightly smeared, as if she'd pressed her mouth too hard together. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "Jordan," she said, folding her arms, "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest." My stomach dropped. "Okay." A pause stretched between us. "Do you wear my clothes?" The room went silent. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She didn't need my answer. "I found the folder on your laptop," she continued calmly. "Photos. Videos. You in my heels. My dresses. My lipstick." It felt like the floor vanished beneath me. "Emma, I started, but she raised a hand. "I'm not angry," she said. "But I am disappointed. Not in this." Her eyes flicked downward briefly. "In the fact that you didn't trust me enough to tell me." She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She simply turned and walked into the bedroom, closing the door behind her. That was 3 days ago. Since then, she'd been distant, quiet in a way that felt intentional, like she was rearranging something in her head. I told myself maybe time would soften it. Maybe she'd decide to let it go. Tonight, she smiled at me. It wasn't affectionate. It was precise. "I've been thinking," she said lightly. "You should probably take a break from work. You've been under a lot of pressure, haven't you?" I hesitated. "Yeah, I guess. I have an idea," she continued. "Something constructive. A little exercise. A chance for you to explore your secret properly." Something in her voice made my back straighten. "I want you to be authentic," she murmured, stepping closer. "But that means trusting me completely now." She placed a sleek black box on the counter. I opened it slowly. Inside were things far finer than anything I owned: a tailored pencil skirt, nude sheer tights, a delicate lace blouse, her unmistakable red heels. On top lay a polished gold nameplate: Jordana, Executive Secretary to Miss Emma Quinn. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't forgiveness. It was a plan. I lifted my eyes to her, and that's when I noticed it, the sharp gleam behind them. Not anger. Satisfaction. "Congratulations," Emma said coolly. "Welcome to your new role." The next morning, the bed was no longer mine. The clothes were arranged with surgical precision, every crease perfect, every piece intentional. Emma was already gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a handwritten note pinned to the fabric. "Put it on. I'll know if you don't." My fingers shook as I reached for the blouse. It was a soft blush tone, trimmed with fine lace at the neckline and sleeves. Elegant. Delicate. Far more refined than anything I'd ever dared to wear, even alone. The skirt was narrow and severe, the kind that demanded composure. And the heels, there was no mistaking them. Her red heels. Sharp, glossy, impossibly tall. I stood there in stunned silence, half expecting laughter to echo from somewhere. Was this punishment? A joke dragged out too far? Or something else entirely? And yet, beneath the confusion, something familiar stirred. A spark. The same pulse I used to feel years ago, alone in my room, when I knew no one would interrupt. Only now, this wasn't hidden. This was assigned. I locked the bedroom door. The process was careful, almost reverent. The tights came first, sheer, flawless, sliding up my legs like liquid glass. I'd never felt fabric like this before. They clung perfectly, smoothing, shaping, leaving no room to retreat. My breath came faster. The skirt followed, snug and unforgiving, forcing my body into a posture I wasn't used to holding. Then the blouse, light as air, settling against me in a way that felt both wrong and unsettlingly right. The mirror showed someone unfamiliar. Still my face. Still my shoulders. But the clothes changed the language of my body. I found myself standing straighter, angling my head without realizing it, movements softening as if guided by memory that wasn't mine. The heels were last. They raised me higher than I expected, stealing my balance and demanding my attention. The first step was clumsy. The next cautious. By the time I crossed the room again, there was a rhythm to it, uneasy but real. For a moment, just one, I felt something close to pride. Then the front door opened. Panic tore through me. I turned, rushing back toward the bedroom, the sharp clicks of the heels betraying every step. I didn't make it far. Emma was already there. She took me in slowly, deliberately, her gaze tracing every line and tremor. I tried to speak. She didn't let me. She lifted her phone and snapped a photo. The sound was final. "Good," she said softly. "You followed instructions." From that moment on, nothing went back to the way it was. Emma didn't ridicule me. She didn't threaten me. She simply took control. She coached, corrected, refined, each gesture calculated, each word chosen. Whatever this was, it wasn't about my freedom. It was about hers. One morning, she placed a bottle of foundation in my hand and smiled faintly. "You listen better like this," she said. "When you look the part." "And now that we're done pretending," she said one evening almost casually, "I think it's time you start working for me. Properly." I blinked. "Working how?" Her gaze sharpened. "At home. As my secretary." I laughed weakly, hoping, praying, she was joking. "You mean like role play?" She didn't smile. "Every day." I cleared out the study. "It's your office now, Jordana." She said the name effortlessly, like it had always been mine and I was the one who'd forgotten. Not Jordan. Not anymore. From then on, the routine locked into place. Each morning, Emma left a carefully selected outfit waiting for me. Stockings that demanded precision, blouses cut just tight enough to remind me of my posture, skirts that forced my legs into a neat cross the moment I sat down. The heels changed daily, never drastic, just incrementally more challenging. Enough to keep me conscious of every step. Sometimes there were extras. Clip-on earrings. A swipe of pale lipstick. Once, a lightly padded bra placed on top of the folded clothes like an afterthought. "Appearance matters," she murmured one morning, fastening a strand of pearls around my neck. "If you want to be taken seriously." And she did take it seriously. She gave me actual work, her calendar to manage, reports to format, presentations to print. Voice notes arrived throughout the day, clipped and efficient, and I typed them up at the desk she'd assigned me, spine straight, ankles tucked neatly together like she'd shown me. The strangest part? She told no one. Not her friends. Not her sister. Not a single colleague. I was kept out of sight, sealed inside the apartment, her private arrangement. Her secret. The irony wasn't lost on me. As days passed, the changes crept in quietly. My skin softened under the lotions she insisted I use. My movements slowed, refined themselves without permission. I caught myself adjusting my posture automatically, smoothing imaginary wrinkles from my skirt, checking my reflection before opening a door. And worse, I began to anticipate the mornings. There was a nervous flutter each time I reached the bed, followed by something dangerously close to excitement as I dressed. But inside, something was fracturing. Because this had stopped being about expression. This was control. Emma decided everything, what I wore, when I worked, when I spoke. Her dominance wasn't loud or cruel. It was calm, methodical, like she was editing me line by line. Then one afternoon, while filing documents in the study, I found the proof. A folder. My hands went cold as I opened it. Inside were notes, timelines, bullet points, voice training, hair removal appointments, Hormonal consultation. Underlined. Remote assistant transition. Final phase. Introduction to social circle. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't improvisation. This was design. I didn't know when she decided to do this. Maybe she'd known about me long before I confessed. Maybe she'd been watching, waiting. Either way, this wasn't forgiveness. It was retaliation. And still, against my will, part of me responded. There were moments I didn't hate my reflection. Moments I felt oddly validated sitting at her desk in a fitted blouse, nails neatly filed, hair pinned back just so. Seen, not by the world, but by her. The woman I once loved. The woman who now owned the rules of my existence. The real test came a week later. Emma came home carrying a slim gray box. I scheduled a Zoom call for tomorrow, she said. You'll be attending. My heart jumped. Attending how? You'll be taking notes. One of my clients. He thinks you're my new remote assistant. I shook my head. Emma, I can't. You will. Her tone cut cleanly through me. And you'll wear this. She handed me the box. Inside, a lilac blouse with a soft ruffled collar, a matching skirt, pearl earrings, a shoulder-length brunette wig, and a small name badge. I've prepared you for this, she whispered close to my ear. Don't embarrass me. Then she left me alone with the silence. That night, I barely slept. Morning came without ceremony. No note. No outfit laid out. Just the box on the table, waiting. I thought about canceling the call, inventing an excuse, pulling the emergency brake while I still could. But I didn't. I opened the box. Each piece felt heavier than the last as I dressed, like I was stepping into a version of myself she'd already decided was real. This wasn't just clothing anymore. This was identity. By the time I clipped the name badge to my blouse, my hands had stopped shaking. The screen would turn on soon. And Jordana would be ready. I stared at my reflection and tried to read it the way Emma would. Approval. Satisfaction. I couldn't tell anymore where one ended and the other began. The meeting was scheduled for exactly 9. Emma had already left the apartment, sending a single message as she closed the door behind her. Be perfect. I'm recording. My stomach lurched. The laptop hummed to life, the camera already active. I adjusted the frame so only my face and shoulders were visible. Professional, neutral, safe. The wig sat neatly. The blouse lay smooth. My makeup was restrained, deliberate. Then the client joined. He was older, polished, confident in the way corporate men often are. Good morning, he said, glancing down at his screen. You must be Jordana, Emma's assistant. Yes, I replied, lifting my voice just enough to fit the role. Nice to meet you. That was it. No hesitation. No suspicion. The meeting flowed. I typed, nodded, smiled when appropriate, everything Emma had drilled into me. 40 minutes later, it ended. The screen went dark. I sat there, frozen, then sagged back into the chair as if my strings had been cut. I had done it. I had passed. For a brief, dangerous second, I felt accomplished. That feeling didn't survive the afternoon. Emma came home early. She didn't take off her sunglasses. She raised her phone instead. Smile. The shutter clicked. I turned away, pulse racing. I did what you wanted. It went well. I know, she said lightly. I watched. She approached at her usual measured pace. You're very good at this, Jordana. Calm. Convincing. A pause. Honestly, better at this than you ever were at being my partner. The words landed harder than I expected. She sat across from me and removed her glasses. Her expression was clear, focused. You know what I finally understand, she said. You lied to me for months. Made me doubt myself when I noticed things missing. Lipstick. Hosiery. Shoes that didn't end up where I left them. She leaned forward. But now, you're finally honest. I swallowed. Is this revenge? She tilted her head. No. This is clarity. Then she left the room, leaving her phone behind. The screen lit up. My breath caught. A shared cloud folder was open. Dozens of files. Photos. Screenshots from the call. Candid shots taken when I thought I was alone. Close-ups of moments I didn't remember being watched. One caption burned itself into my vision. Training phase complete. Resistance minimal. My chest tightened until it hurt. I closed the laptop and broke down quietly, the sound trapped somewhere deep in my throat. 2 days passed. Emma behaved as if everything were normal. She smiled. Made coffee. Brushed my cheek with her thumb. She even allowed something softer. An easy dress, low heels. I almost convinced myself the pressure had eased. Then the email arrived. Subject: Staff meeting, Friday 3 p.m. Location, living room dress code, formal attendance, mandatory. My heart hammered as I ran to the bedroom. The outfit was already waiting. Black dress, sheer tights, red heels, diamond studs, a bold lipstick with a handwritten label, Power. A note rested on top. You'll take notes. Smile. Be gracious. We'll have company. Friday arrived too quickly. I dressed without speaking, the lipstick bright against my mouth, the wig sleek and precise. I held myself upright, refusing to let the tremor show. The doorbell rang. Emma was seated on the couch, wine glass in hand. Beside her stood Lexi, tall, sharp-eyed, already amused. Perfect timing, Emma said. Lexi laughed softly. You weren't exaggerating. She really does look the part. I stood still as Lexi circled me, inspecting. Name. Jordana, I said. Again. Jordana. Emma clapped once. Lovely. Wine, please. I poured while they talked, about work, about people I didn't know, about me as if I weren't there. I stood just behind them, invisible and burning. Then Emma said it. Next time, we'll invite more people. Lexi smiled. A reveal party, maybe. The bottle slipped from my hands and shattered. Silence. Emma rose slowly, heels tapping as she crossed the room. She leaned close. Clean it up, she whispered. You're not finished yet. Later, alone, I stood before the mirror. Makeup smeared. Expression hollow. The clipboard still clutched in my hand, notes written with perfect care. I dropped it. The dress. The heels. The reflection. Who was left? In the corner of the room, a red light blinked. Recording. Always recording. I didn't sleep that night. Even after the floor was clean, the makeup gone, the heels set aside, I still felt exposed. Watched. As if the role clung to me long after the costume came off. I couldn't live inside the not knowing anymore. The next morning, I waited until I heard the door close behind her. The lock clicked. Silence followed. I ignored the clothes she'd laid out like an order waiting to be obeyed. Instead, I pulled on jeans and a hoodie, Jordan's uniform. My shield. The moment I was sure she was gone, I went straight to the living room and opened her laptop. The password came to me instantly. K-enum. I hated myself for knowing it. Her cloud drive was already open. A folder sat at the top of the list. Jordana files. My chest tightened as I clicked. Inside were more folders than I could process. Dates, labels, phases. One stopped me cold. Scheduled release. There was a single video inside. Jordana_secretary_reveal_final.mp4. My hands shook as I pressed play. The screen filled with me, polished, composed, lavender blouse, lipstick perfect, heels tucked neatly under the chair. Subtitles ran cleanly along the bottom. The footage was edited with care, softened lighting, gentle transitions. Then the final moment. The camera zoomed in slowly as Emma's voice drifted in, calm and unmistakable. "Say it." On screen, I hesitated. Then I heard myself speak. "My name is Jordana, and I belong to Miss Emma." Fade to black. Music. End card. I stared at the details beneath the video. Scheduled upload. Tonight, 8 p.m. Platform. YouTube. Public. My lungs refused to work. This wasn't leverage. This wasn't control. This was annihilation. Everyone would see it. My parents, my coworkers, clients, strangers. No explanation. No context. Just me, framed exactly the way she wanted. I was still standing there, numb, when I heard the knock. One sharp rap. Then another. Not tentative. Not polite. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I moved slowly to the door and peered through the peephole. My manager stood there. Behind him, Rachel, my team lead. And behind her, Emma. She smiled like this was all perfectly reasonable, a folder tucked under her arm. The knocking resumed, louder now. Then her voice carried through the door, warm and deadly calm. "Jordan, darling, let's not be difficult. Come out dressed properly." My legs nearly gave out. She'd orchestrated this. Every step. Every reveal. This was the meeting. This was the point. I backed away from the door, breath shallow, heart hammering. The laptop still glowed on the table behind me, the countdown ticking silently toward 8 o'clock. I looked down at myself. Hoodie, jeans, solid and familiar. Then I looked toward the hallway closet. The clothes were still there. The version of me she'd designed. The role she'd rehearsed me for. Another knock. The handle rattled. She had a key. They could walk in at any moment. I stood between two selves, unable to move. One step toward the closet and I'd surrender. One step toward escape and everything would still follow me. Tears blurred my vision. I didn't know who I was anymore. But I knew one thing with terrifying certainty. Whatever happened next, the world was about to find out.